The screen opens with the Manhattan skyline at dawn. The city is alive but not yet awake. Headlights streak across bridges, steam rises from subway grates, and glass towers glow faintly as the first rays of sunlight pierce them. The camera lingers on Cross Enterprises Tower, a 60-story fortress of steel and mirrored glass. Inside, everything gleams: marble floors, chrome accents, and security that feels closer to a bank vault than an office lobby. Some people are born into empires. Others build them with their bare hands. And then there are those who fight every day just to step inside the gates. This is the story of two such people from opposite worlds, destined to collide. One hardened by shadows, the other armed with kindness. Ethan Cross, standing before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse. His reflection overlays the skyline, tall, broad-shouldered, immaculately dressed in a charcoal suit. His eyes are cold, gray, and unreadable. Amelia Torres, riding a crowded Queens subway in a navy blazer that's beginning to fray at the edges. She clutches a worn leather briefcase with one hand and steadies her mother's pillbox in the other. Her eyes are alive, hopeful, but tired. They don't know it yet, but their lives are about to change. Not because of power. Not because of money. But because of kindness, the most underestimated force in the Boardroom Shadows. Cross Enterprises, CEO office, 7:30 a.m. The office is minimalist: cold steel gray furniture, a glass desk with not a paper out of place, shelves lined with books no one has opened in years. Ethan stands with his back to the room, overlooking Manhattan. His assistant, Sofia Alvarez, enters quietly, carrying his morning reports. Your 8 o'clock call with Tokyo has been rescheduled. The board is expecting you at 10. Ethan, without turning. And the Boston deal? Sofia, secured. But the compliance team flagged. Ethan, curtly. Then find someone to unflag it. That's what I pay them for. Sofia hesitates, then leaves her face betraying unease. Ethan closes his eyes briefly, fighting an exhaustion that no amount of power or money can erase. On his desk sits a silver-framed photo of a young woman, his late sister, Lily. He turns it face down before picking up his coffee. To the world, Ethan Cross is power incarnate. Ruthless. Efficient. Unstoppable. But power has its price. For Ethan, it was loneliness and regret. Modest Queens apartment, 6:30 a.m. Amelia stands in the kitchen, buttoning her blazer with one hand while flipping pancakes for her mother, Elena, with the other. Elena sits at the small kitchen table, oxygen machine humming softly by her side. Elena, you don't have to fuss over me every morning, Mija. You'll be late. Amelia, smiling, I'd rather be late than let you start your day with burnt toast. Besides, it's my first day at Cross Enterprises. I need the good karma. They laugh. Elena studies her daughter with pride and worry. You'll do fine. Just remember, don't let those people make you forget who you are. Amelia squeezes into the rush hour crowd, rehearsing legal jargon under her breath. She reviews case notes on her phone, determined to make a strong impression. The subway emerges from the tunnel. The cross tower looms ahead like a giant casting its shadow. Amelia Torres, the daughter of an immigrant nurse. The first in her family to graduate college, then law school. She has no fortune, no safety net. Only grit, and the quiet determination to make her mark. Cross Enterprises boardroom, 10 a.m. The boardroom is intimidating. A massive mahogany table, digital displays glowing with graphs, walls lined with expensive art. Executives in tailored suits shuffle documents. Amelia sits at the far end, her badge still marked associate, compliance division. She feels invisible until her eyes land on Ethan, who enters with an aura that stills the entire room. The meeting begins. A billion-dollar real estate project is on the line. Slides flash across the screen: profits, expansion, shareholder value. Amelia's hands tremble as she flips through her notes. Something isn't right. She sees discrepancies, figures that don't add up. Evictions buried under operational adjustments. Her heart pounds. Should she speak? A voice in her head whispers, "Stay quiet. It's your first day. Don't be stupid." But then she sees the face of Jamal Brooks, a teenager she'd met in Queens whose family was facing eviction. These numbers, they're not just numbers. They're people like him. Amelia, hesitant, then firm. "Excuse me, These projections are incomplete. The compliance review isn't finished. If we proceed as written, regulators will shut this down. The room freezes. Murmurs. Executives exchange incredulous looks. Senior executive, scoffing. And you are? Amelia, steady. Amelia Torres. Compliance counsel. The room chuckles. Until Ethan speaks. Ethan, studying her. Noted. The laughter dies instantly. Amelia lowers her eyes, pulse racing. Ethan doesn't rebuke her, doesn't fire her. He just stares, as if measuring her worth. She expected humiliation. She expected to be dismissed. Instead, in a single word, Ethan Cross gave her something she never thought she'd find in this tower of glass: space to be heard. Later that afternoon, company cafeteria hallway. A senior associate, red-faced with anger, corners Leo, a timid intern, over a misplaced file. His voice echoes harshly. You think this is Harvard Law? One mistake and you're gone. Pack your things. Amelia, passing by, sees Leo's face pale with fear. She pauses, then steps in. It wasn't Leo's fault. That report was routed through me first. He actually caught the error before it spread. The associate glares at her, clearly unconvinced, but unwilling to challenge her publicly. He mutters and storms off. Leo stares at Amelia, wide-eyed. Leo, whispering. You just saved me. Amelia shrugs, smiling. Don't worry. Just keep doing good work. That's what matters. Across the hall, unseen by Amelia, Ethan watches. For reasons he cannot name, the scene unsettles him. In Ethan's world, mistakes were punished. Kindness was weakness. But Amelia's instinct was different. To shield. To protect. To care. A single act that would ripple farther than she could imagine. Ethan's penthouse, midnight. Ethan sits alone at a sleek glass dining table, a glass of whiskey untouched. He scrolls through reports on his tablet, but his mind drifts to Amelia's face. The courage in her voice. The way she protected that intern. He opens a different file, a hospital billing system. He sees Elena Torres' name. Past due medical expenses. Without thinking, he clicks Pay in Full. The system flashes. Payment confirmed. Ethan closes his laptop sharply, almost angry at himself. Why did he care? Why her? He turns the photo of Lily, his sister, back upright. Her eyes seem to ask him a question he cannot answer. Kindness. A word his father never taught him. A word he had spent his life dismissing. Yet tonight, for the first time in years, Ethan Cross allowed it into his world. Amelia in her Queens apartment. She opens a letter from the hospital. Her mother's debt has been marked paid in full. She gasps, eyes filling with tears. Her mother looks at her in confusion. Elena. Mija? What happened? Amelia, whispering. Someone paid it. She looks out her window at the Manhattan skyline, her heart racing. Across the city, Ethan stares into the darkness of his penthouse, alone. They didn't know it yet. But a single act of kindness had already begun to tie their lives together in ways neither could have imagined. It is early spring in New York. The corporate skyline is bathed in sharp sunlight, glass towers reflecting both promise and pressure. Inside Titan Corp's 52nd floor boardroom, mahogany tables gleam under recessed lighting. The room hums with the low chatter of directors and executives preparing for one of the most pivotal meetings of the year, the annual strategy review. The contrast is striking. Outside, the city pulses with messy life, street vendors, children rushing to school, musicians playing saxophones in subway stations. Inside, time feels sterile and calculated, where words like synergy and market expansion dominate. It is in this sterile boardroom, beneath layers of formality, that Eleanor and Adrian's paths truly begin to cross. Eleanor walks into the boardroom clutching her leather-bound notes. She's prepared, as always, graphs memorized, data points at her fingertips. Yet her chest carries a heaviness from the previous night's insomnia. She kept replaying the image of the mother and child she helped outside the diner. It tugged at something raw in her, a reminder that success means little if it doesn't touch lives. She steels herself, reminding her reflection in the glass before entering, you don't have the luxury of distraction. This is your chance to prove you belong here, not as a token executive, but as a voice of vision. Adrian arrives moments later, tailored suit crisp, smile sharp as a blade. To the directors, he is effortless charm incarnate. But beneath his calm facade, he is restless. The conversation with the janitor still lingers in his mind. How grateful the man looked, how it felt oddly fulfilling to help without needing recognition. For someone accustomed to deals worth millions, it was almost unsettling how real that moment was. The boardroom fills. Richard Langston, the board chairman, clears his throat and launches into profit forecasts, margins, and overseas expansion. Eleanor presents her segment, eloquent, incisive, grounded in research. She proposes that Titan Corp expand not only for profit, but also with social responsibility initiatives that could enhance both reputation and employee morale. A hush falls. Her words are not what the board expects. Numbers matter. Compassion is a foreign language here. Richard scoffs. Richard, Ms. Hayes, we are not running a charity. Shareholders demand returns, not sentiment. The silence is thick. Eleanor feels her pulse quicken. She braces for Adrian to echo Richard's dismissal. But then Adrian leans forward, his tone smooth yet unexpectedly supportive. Adrian, actually Richard, Eleanor has a point. Long-term growth isn't just about quarterly profit. Companies with strong social impact programs retain better talent and build public trust. That's not charity, it's strategy. Eleanor glances at him, startled. For the first time, she sees not just the calculating CEO, but someone who might understand. Their eyes meet briefly. Something flickers there, recognition, perhaps curiosity. After the meeting, as executives disperse, Eleanor lingers behind, gathering her papers. Adrian approaches, his footsteps measured. Adrian, you held your ground well in there. Not many people challenge Richard. Eleanor, guarded, but appreciative, I wasn't challenging him. Just suggesting another way to look at things. Adrian, smiling slightly, same thing in his book. There is a pause. Eleanor expects him to retreat, to resume his polished CEO mask. Instead, he surprises her. Adrian, out of curiosity, what made you push that angle today? Most people play it safe in those meetings. Eleanor hesitates, debating how much to reveal. Finally, she says, Eleanor, because real people work for this company. People with families, with struggles. We can't pretend the world outside these walls doesn't affect them. Adrian studies her quietly. For once, his usual quick-witted response doesn't come. Instead he nods, a small gesture, but one that feels like an acknowledgement deeper than words. Later that week, the company hosts a networking dinner at a luxury hotel ballroom. Eleanor attends reluctantly, uncomfortable with the opulence. When she notices a young server struggling to balance a heavy tray of champagne glasses, she instinctively reaches out, steadying it before disaster strikes. She offers a reassuring smile, whispering, Eleanor, take a breath. You've got this. Adrian, across the room, sees the exchange. He doesn't say anything, but something stirs in him, recognition of her quiet, instinctive kindness. That night, he sends her an email. I saw what you did tonight. Most people wouldn't have noticed. That's the kind of leadership this company needs. Adrian. Eleanor reads the message at home, alone in her apartment. For the first time in a long while, she feels seen, not for her competence, not for her ambition, but for her humanity. Tension, the attraction is not overt yet, but there's a subtle recognition between them, two people who have lived opposite lives, yet both haunted by loneliness. Their connection is dangerous. Office politics, gender dynamics, and corporate power all make their budding rapport fraught with risk. The small gestures, her steadying a server, his email acknowledgement, become the first threads weaving them together. 2 weeks after their boardroom encounter, Titan Corp faces a crisis. An investigative journalist publishes a damning article exposing unsafe working conditions at one of Titan Corp's overseas factories. Images of exhausted laborers flood the news cycle. Protesters gather outside Titan Corp headquarters with signs reading, "Profits over people and corporate greed kills." The scandal threatens Titan Corp's stock value, brand reputation, and Adrian's leadership. Richard Langston immediately calls for damage control. The board demands a public statement focused on protecting shareholder interests. Eleanor, however, argues for accountability and real reform. For the first time, Eleanor and Adrian find themselves on opposite sides of a very public issue. Eleanor spends nights poring over reports, the faces of those factory workers etched in her mind. Memories of her father's layoffs resurface, along with the guilt of knowing she is now part of the very machine that once hurt her family. In a heated executive meeting, she speaks with uncharacteristic passion. "We can't just spin this with press releases. These are human lives. We need to own this mistake, compensate the workers, and fix our supply chain. Otherwise, this company will lose more than stock value, it will lose its soul." The room falls silent. Executives shift uncomfortably. Richard scoffs. "Idealism doesn't pay dividends, Ms. Hayes." Adrian is torn. On one hand, his instincts align with Eleanor's. On the other, he faces immense pressure from investors and the board. His upbringing, rooted in preserving image and control, tells him to issue a polished statement, bury the scandal and move on. That night, he stands alone in his office, gazing out at the glittering Manhattan skyline. The city looks invincible, untouchable, yet he feels more vulnerable than ever. He replays Eleanor's words in his mind. He admires her conviction, but fears her approach could dismantle everything he's built. The tension between them becomes palpable. In private, Eleanor confronts Adrian. "You know I'm right. Don't hide behind PR strategies. These people deserve better." Adrian, frustrated, defensive, "Do you think I don't care? You think it's that simple, wave a magic wand and suddenly decades of supply chain issues disappear? If I mishandle this, thousands of employees here in the US could lose their jobs." Eleanor, softly but firmly, "And what about the thousands overseas already paying the price for our success?" The silence that follows is heavier than any argument. In the days that follow, Eleanor channels her energy into quiet acts within the company. She arranges for care packages to be sent to workers at the affected factory. She personally answers emails from lower-level employees who fear Titan Corp's reputation will taint their livelihoods. She mentors Daniel Ortiz, the mid-level employee introduced earlier, who confides that he feels ashamed to work for the company. Meanwhile, Adrian makes his own discreet gesture. He anonymously donates to a worker relief fund, though he tells no one, not even Eleanor. But the acts are separate now, divided by the rift between them. One evening, after yet another tense meeting, Eleanor leaves the office late. She finds herself in the lobby exhausted, when she notices a custodian struggling with a heavy trash cart. Without hesitation, she helps him push it to the service elevator. The custodian, surprised, thanks her warmly. "Custodian, most people don't even see me. You're different." Adrian, descending in the executive elevator, sees the exchange. For a moment he just watches her, this woman who, despite the battles in the boardroom, never loses sight of kindness in the smallest places. It stirs something deep in him, admiration, guilt, longing. The crisis escalates. Media pressure intensifies. Investors threaten to pull out. Employees begin whispering about possible layoffs. Eleanor pushes harder for reform, while Adrian wrestles with protecting Titan Corp's empire versus embracing change. Their relationship teeters between respect and rupture. For Eleanor, the challenge becomes not just saving workers' dignity, but holding on to her belief that compassion can coexist with corporate ambition. For Adrian, the challenge becomes deciding whether he is willing to risk legacy, reputation, and control, for truth, for integrity, and perhaps for the woman who dares to challenge him. Titan Corp's scandal refuses to die down. News outlets dissect every boardroom decision, analysts question Adrian's leadership, and Eleanor finds herself painted as the moral rebel within the company. Internally, whispers circulate: "She's too idealistic, she's dangerous, she might be the next to go." The mounting pressure begins to wear on Eleanor. She's still showing up strong in meetings, but late at night in her apartment, she feels cracks forming. The world she fought to belong in now threatens to consume her. Adrian, too, feels the unraveling. He fields hostile calls from investors, publicists, and journalists. He drinks more scotch than usual, spends longer nights in his office, and hides his exhaustion behind sharp suits and rehearsed confidence. One night, close to midnight, Eleanor leaves her office and steps into the nearly deserted executive floor. As she waits for the elevator, She hears faint music echoing from Adrian's corner office. Hesitating, she peeks in and sees him sitting alone, tie undone, sleeves rolled up, nursing a drink. Jazz plays softly from his speaker. For the first time, he doesn't look like the untouchable CEO, he looks human, worn down, almost fragile. Adrian notices her at the door. Instead of brushing her off, he gestures to the chair across from him. If you're here this late too, we might as well share the silence. Eleanor sits. At first, they don't speak. The music fills the space between them. Then slowly, words come. Adrian, after a long pause, when I was a kid, my father used to say weakness was the fastest way to be forgotten. He meant emotions. Compassion. Anything that could make you seem soft. Sometimes I think I've spent my whole life trying to prove him wrong, and failing. Eleanor, quietly, my father wasn't wealthy. He worked himself to the bone in a factory until the day they told him he was no longer needed. I promised myself I'd never let anyone make me feel that powerless again. But here I am, still fighting the same fight, just in a different uniform. For a moment, the corporate masks drop. They see each other not as CEO and COO, not as rivals or allies, but as two human beings shaped by very different wounds. Adrian pours Eleanor a glass of scotch, sliding it across the desk. She hesitates, then accepts. Their fingers brush briefly as she takes it, electric, subtle, yet undeniable. They drink, the silence less heavy now, almost companionable. Eleanor studies him, his sharp features softened in the dim light, the way his eyes betray a tiredness he hides from the world. Adrian studies her too, the determination in her gaze, the vulnerability she rarely allows anyone to see. The air hums with unspoken possibility. Neither says the words, but both feel it, something is shifting. The following week, their interactions change. Still professional, still cautious, but there's a new undercurrent. They begin to look for small ways to support one another. Adrian quietly redirects hostile questions away from Eleanor during meetings, giving her room to breathe. Eleanor notices Adrian's secretary overwhelmed with work and helps her reorganize deadlines, crediting Adrian's strategic oversight, so the secretary doesn't take the blame. When Adrian forgets to eat lunch before a long investor call, Eleanor leaves a sandwich on his desk without a word. He finds it, smiles faintly, and later sends her a 2-word text, "Thank you." The gestures are small, almost invisible to the outside world. But together, they weave a thread of trust. Meanwhile, Richard Langston grows increasingly suspicious. He notices Adrian's subtle defense of Eleanor and Eleanor's increasing influence on decisions. To Richard, it looks like weakness, and he begins plotting to exploit it. At the same time, gossip trickles through the executive ranks, whispers of late-night meetings, unusual closeness. Eleanor and Adrian both know the risks. In the corporate world, perception is everything. Yet the more the outside pressure mounts, the more they find solace in each other. One rainy evening, Eleanor finds herself overwhelmed. After a brutal day of being undermined in a board meeting, she storms out into the city streets, umbrella forgotten, rain soaking her suit. Adrian, leaving shortly after, spots her walking down Fifth Avenue, drenched and trembling with anger. Without a word, he pulls up beside her in his car, rolls down the window. "Adrian, get in. Please." She hesitates, then slips inside, dripping water onto the leather seats. They drive in silence until Adrian pulls over near the East River, the city lights shimmering through the rain. Eleanor, voice shaking, "Sometimes I wonder if I'm just fooling myself. If I'm naive to think kindness can survive in a world like this." Adrian turns to her, his voice low but steady. "Adrian, if it weren't for you, I'd have given up believing it matters a long time ago." Their eyes meet in the dim glow of the dashboard. Something fragile and unspoken passes between them, not yet romance, but something deeper, recognition. Richard Langston, ever the hawk, senses weakness in the CEO-COO dynamic. He watches the subtle changes in Adrian, his uncharacteristic defenses of Eleanor, the way his decisions begin to reflect her ideals. To Richard, this isn't evolution, it's corruption of Titan Corp's pure profit-first model. So he sets a trap. Richard leaks an internal memo to the press, carefully altered to suggest that Eleanor had prior knowledge of the factory violations but deliberately buried the information to avoid damaging Titan Corp's expansion strategy. The story explodes. Overnight, Eleanor becomes the villain in the public eye, Titan Corp's COO complicit in scandal. Eleanor wakes to flashing phone alerts and reporters crowding the lobby of her building. Headlines scream her name. Her inbox overflows with accusations. Colleagues avoid her gaze in the office halls, and employees whisper as she walks past. She storms into Adrian's office, eyes blazing. "Do you believe this?" Adrian, shaken of course not. "But the board will." "Then say something. Speak up for me." Adrian, hesitant, torn. "I can't, not yet. If I defend you before I have proof, I'll look compromised. They'll use it against both of us." Her heart twists. In her darkest hour, he chooses silence. Despite the public humiliation, Eleanor still finds ways to act with kindness. She continues mentoring Daniel Ortiz, even as he nervously asks if her career is over. She refuses to lash out at Titan Corp's communications team, who follow orders to sideline her in meetings. She writes a quiet note of encouragement to a factory manager overseas who reaches out in fear, signing it simply, "Hold on." Truth finds a way. But inside, she's unraveling. She feels betrayed not only by Richard's scheme, but by Adrian's silence. What Eleanor doesn't know is that Adrian is already moving behind the scenes. He hires private investigators at his own expense to trace the source of the leaked memo. He digs through board communications late into the night, looking for proof of Richard's manipulation. In one scene, Adrian meets with an investor who pressures him to cut Eleanor loose to save Titan Corp's image. Adrian refuses outright, even if it costs him support. But he tells no one, not even Eleanor. To her, his silence looks like complicity. The tension erupts one stormy night in Adrian's office. Eleanor confronts him, her voice raw with hurt. "Eleanor, do you know what it feels like to have your name dragged through the mud while the one person who could stop it stays silent? I thought you were different. I thought." Her voice falters, but the unspoken word hangs in the air. "I thought you cared." Adrian, torn between anger and desperation, slams his fist on the desk. "Adrian, you think I don't care? Everything I've built, my entire career, is at risk because I refuse to sacrifice you. I'm fighting for you in ways you can't see." But it's too late. Eleanor, overwhelmed, leaves before he can explain. The door slams, echoing like finality. For days, Eleanor debates resigning. Walking away would be easy, escape the whispers, the scrutiny, the betrayal. But then she remembers the custodian who thanked her for seeing him, Daniel Ortiz's hope, and the workers overseas who clung to her words. She makes a decision. She will stay, not for Titan Corp's board, not even for Adrian, but for the people whose lives are tied to the company's choices. At the same time, Adrian uncovers the truth. Richard orchestrated the leak. Armed with evidence, he prepares to expose him, but doing so could fracture the board, trigger lawsuits, and destabilize Titan Corp's market standing. It is a gamble that could cost him everything: his position, his wealth, his reputation. But if he doesn't take it, Eleanor's career, and the truth, will remain destroyed. Both Eleanor and Adrian are forced into sacrifice. Eleanor sacrifices her pride, choosing to endure public humiliation rather than abandon her principles. Adrian sacrifices his safety net, risking his empire to protect Eleanor and the integrity of Titan Corp. And though they stand apart, both acts echo the same truth: kindness is never weakness, it is the hardest form of strength. Despite the humiliation, Eleanor continues her work, walking into Titan Corp's glass towers each day with her head held high. The gossip lingers, but she refuses to disappear. She begins hosting informal listening sessions with employees, off the record, outside the sterile HR conference rooms. Custodians, factory workers, even junior analysts gather in small groups after hours, sharing grievances and hopes. Eleanor listens, takes notes, and promises nothing but understanding. Her resilience inspires whispers of admiration. She hasn't left. She's still here, still fighting. Kindness, once subtle, now becomes her shield. 2. Adrian's discovery. Meanwhile, Adrian uncovers the smoking gun. Hidden in Richard Langston's communications is an encrypted thread revealing the deliberate leak of doctored files. When Adrian reads it, a surge of anger nearly consumes him, but also relief. Finally, proof. Finally, a way to clear Eleanor. Yet the revelation comes with a heavy choice: To expose Richard is to risk destabilizing Titan Corp. The stock could plummet, investors could flee, and the empire Adrian built over decades could collapse overnight. He spends sleepless nights in his penthouse, staring out at the city skyline, weighing empire versus truth. 3. The unexpected ally. One evening, as Eleanor leaves the office late, she finds Daniel Ortiz waiting by the lobby doors. Nervous but determined, he hands her a flash drive. "Daniel, I don't know if this helps, but I found discrepancies in the finance logs, Richard's signature on transactions linked to the memo leak. I couldn't sit back and watch you take the fall." Her eyes well with tears. This act of kindness, small, risky, but profound, bolsters her resolve. She isn't alone. Her quiet support of Daniel months ago has rippled back to her in her darkest hour. 4. The press conference. Adrian calls an emergency press conference. The room is electric, reporters jostling for space, cameras flashing like lightning. Eleanor watches from the side, heart pounding, unsure if Adrian will use the stage to protect Titan Corp, or to protect her. He begins, voice calm but weighted. "Adrian, recent accusations against Eleanor Hughes are not only false, they are the result of a deliberate smear campaign within this company. And I have the proof." Gasps ripple through the crowd as he unveils the evidence: Richard Langston's communications, the manipulated files, the financial trail Daniel uncovered. The narrative flips instantly. Eleanor is no longer the villain but the victim of betrayal, and the whistleblower of truth. 5. The fall of Richard Langston. The boardroom becomes a battlefield. Richard denies, threatens, and lashes out, but the evidence is undeniable. His allies scatter, unwilling to burn with him. By the end of the night, Richard Langston, once the most untouchable board member, is ousted, his legacy crumbling under the weight of his own corruption. It is a victory not just for Adrian and Eleanor, but for every employee who longed to see integrity triumph. 6. Adrian's personal revelation. After the press conference, Eleanor confronts Adrian in private. Her voice trembles, caught between gratitude and lingering hurt. "Eleanor, why didn't you tell me what you were doing? I thought you'd abandoned me." "Adrian, because I didn't want you to see the lengths I was willing to go. I've built my life on control, on never showing weakness. But for you, Eleanor, I'd risk everything." It's the first time his walls truly crack. She sees not the CEO, not the billionaire, but the man, vulnerable, afraid of loss, but willing to gamble everything for her. 7. The ripple effect of kindness. The aftermath of Richard's fall sends ripples across Titan Corp. Employees begin to speak up more freely, inspired by Eleanor's example. Departments start forming ethics circles, safe spaces to raise concerns. A custodian leaves a handwritten note on Eleanor's desk: "Thank you for fighting for people like us." What began as small gestures, an open door, a listening ear, has transformed into a cultural shift. Kindness is no longer hidden in the shadows, but shaping the company's future. 8. Adrian and Eleanor's turning point. One evening, after the chaos settles, Adrian and Eleanor find themselves alone in his office. The city glows beyond the glass walls, but inside the room is quiet, heavy with unspoken words. Adrian reaches for her hand, hesitant, almost boyish in his uncertainty. "Adrian, you've changed me. I didn't think it was possible, but you have. And not through force, but through kindness. Through seeing me when no one else ever did." Eleanor's eyes soften. For the first time, she allows herself to believe in him, not just as a CEO, but as a man capable of love. Weeks after Richard Langston's fall, Titan Corp feels different. The board, once rigid and untouchable, has begun to bend toward reform. Transparency initiatives are introduced. Employee councils are created. Even the language in company memos begins to shift. Profit is still central, but phrases like ethical accountability and employee well-being appear alongside it. And at the center of it all is Eleanor Hughes. Her listening sessions evolve into official employee voice forums. Workers who once felt invisible now find themselves shaping real policy. Eleanor's kindness, once seen as weakness, becomes the foundation of Titan Corp's renewal. Adrian, too, has changed. Where once he was the embodiment of cold precision, he now walks the halls with a softer gaze. He stops to greet employees, remembers names, even shares lunches in the cafeteria. To outsiders, It may seem like a small shift, but to those who know his guarded past, it is revolutionary. In one moving scene, Adrian meets the custodian Eleanor once encouraged. The man thanks him, shy but heartfelt. "I never thought the CEO would shake my hand. But Ms. Hughes, she made me believe I mattered. And now, you make me believe it too." Adrian is visibly shaken. For the first time, he understands what Eleanor has been fighting for, not just kindness as a gesture, but kindness as a force of transformation. Yet even in the glow of victory, Eleanor carries private doubts. Can she trust Adrian completely? Does his affection for her stem from genuine love, or from gratitude for helping him rediscover his humanity? One evening, she confides in Daniel Ortiz, now thriving in his career. "Eleanor, what if he only sees me as the woman who saved him? What if this ends the moment I stop being the light in his shadows?" "Daniel, maybe that's love, Ms. Hughes. Not someone who needs you to be perfect, but someone who needs you to be real. Even when the shadows return." His words stay with her. Adrian finally confronts his deepest fear, losing Eleanor. In a quiet scene, he invites her to his penthouse, not for a grand dinner, not for champagne, but for honesty. He shows her an old photograph of himself as a boy, standing beside his late father, a man who taught him that weakness was unforgivable. Adrian confesses. "Adrian, I built walls so high I thought no one could climb them. And then you didn't climb. You just knocked again and again, until I opened the door." His voice cracks. The CEO who once ruled boardrooms with iron certainty now trembles before the woman who saw him as human. The story threads small, symbolic acts of kindness throughout this final act. Eleanor leaves a handwritten note on Adrian's desk. "You don't have to fight alone anymore." Adrian anonymously funds scholarships for factory workers' children, inspired by Eleanor's compassion. Titan Corp launches a mentorship program, pairing executives with entry-level staff, a ripple born from Eleanor's first encouragement of Daniel. Each gesture becomes a stitch, weaving kindness into the company's very fabric. The climax of their personal journey unfolds not in a boardroom, but at the annual Titan Corp Gala, a glittering event once symbolic of cold opulence. As Adrian takes the stage to deliver his keynote, the room expects the usual sterile speech. Instead, he acknowledges Eleanor publicly. "Adrian, this company once thrived in shadows. But shadows cannot guide us. Light does. And Eleanor Hughes has been that light. For me. For all of us." Gasps ripple through the crowd, followed by thunderous applause. Eleanor, cheeks flushed, fights tears as Adrian steps down and takes her hand, not as CEO and COO, but as man and woman. In that moment, love, once hidden in shadows, stands unapologetically in the light. In the shadows of power, kindness is easy to overlook, easy to dismiss as weakness. But as Eleanor and Adrian discovered, even the smallest gesture can spark change, shaping lives, reshaping systems, and transforming hearts. The question is not whether kindness has power. The question is, will we choose to use it? Kindness isn't reserved for boardrooms or grand gestures. It begins here. With us. With you. What ripple will your kindness create? If this story moved you, we'd love to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments, share what kindness means to you, or how one small act has touched your life. Don't forget to like this video if you believe in the power of compassion, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our next story. And of course, tap the notification bell to stay updated whenever we share more journeys of love, courage, and humanity.